Hello, listeners. Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a quick moment to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Mission Admissions cuts through the noise in college admissions and recruitment. Host Jeremy Tiers brings a fresh perspective, packing each episode with straight talk advice, tips, and strategies from a mix of pros inside and outside higher ed. One of the things I love most about the show is how Jeremy often brings voices from outside the industry to share perspectives and practices that can be applied to the work that marketers and enrollment professionals like you do every day. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Mission Admissions wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager, a podcast that addresses the do's, don'ts, and dynamics of the digital ecosystem specific to higher education. I'm your host, Jenny Li Fowler. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education social media management and marketing. Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Hello, friends. I am excited to introduce you all to Danny Dean, who not only has the coolest name ever, but is the Associate Director of Social Media at The Ohio State University. And they have accomplished the seemingly impossible task of centralizing their social media presence. But before we dig into that, Danny, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom with us on the show.
Thank you for having me, Jenny. I'm so excited. It was great when we met last year at the Higher Ed Social Media Summit. From then, I was like, Jenny's awesome. So when you reached out, I was really, really excited to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Feelings are mutual, which is why I extended the invitation. So thank you so much for joining us. Danny, let's get into it. How did you start your career in higher ed social media?
A roundabout way, as most people say. So I actually started off in broadcast journalism. The digital space, as we saw, for local news, and we saw viewership dropping, looking at how we do storytelling in the digital space and in the social space was a huge opportunity. So I started focusing even more on that and kind of fell in love with it. And from there, I was in sports broadcast journalism, did content creation, so kind of had all of those skill sets that are really important for working in social marketing. From there, I got an opportunity at Ohio State in the athletics department. And so I did social for them and content creation, and then got to do a little bit of broadcasting too, but just fully leaned in to that career path. And like I said before, fell in love with it. So I've been at Ohio State now for 7 years, started in athletics and then moved over to the university side. And it's a fantastic place. And it's so cool to see how higher ed is continuing to grow in social. I think every year kind of different universities push boundaries and pave the way, and the connections that are being built across all the different higher ed institutions from the social space is really cool to see.
I didn't realize we shared that in common. We both started off in broadcast journalism. So I'll definitely have to follow up with you and dig into that a little bit more.
Local news days.
Exactly. We have lots to reminisce about. So The Ohio State University has a centralized social media presence, but what made the social media team at the time decide to go into this really challenging direction?
So we're still, making progress on it. It is such a massive institution that centralizing isn't something that can happen in 1 year or 5 years, it's kind of an always evolving, function that we're working on. But before, the university was so siloed. There were thousands of social media accounts out there for the colleges, departments, units, just different groups, and nobody was communicating with each other. And it really was the wild, wild west. So this was actually my former boss, Kevin Segke, when he joined Ohio State. The university noticed this situation and saw it as a risk, for many reasons. It could be a security risk, a brand risk, just really trying to think about how do we get everyone thinking strategically across the entire university. There would be campaigns going on that were almost the same, but nobody was communicating with each other. So how are we just really streamlining things? How are we within the enterprise marketing team, how are we kind of serving as consultants or industry leaders for everyone across the university that doesn't have a specialized social media individual or team? A lot of units have somebody who wear many, many hats, which is normal in this career field, but being able to give them those tools and skills and best practices, and all communicating through one place was really a big reason why we did it. And then that safety side too. So that's where we implemented a social media audit to get an understanding of what is the landscape and the scope of Ohio State as a brand on social media across the entire university. I know that first audit, I had joined the team, I believe, in the second year, but the first one was massive and a big challenge. I think we'll talk about it later, but I have changed since I took over what that audit looks like and kind of the purpose that it serves. The first one really was to understand who's out there, what platforms are they on, who are they talking to, do they have a strategy in place, or are they just out there to be out there, which we're all very against. We want everybody to think, should I be on this platform and who am I trying to talk to? And always thinking, yeah, an audience strategy first.
Totally. It's not ideal just to be on a social media platform just to be on it. That's
Hmm.
definitely not the goal. And I think we all share that sentiment about, a social media on campus where a lot of times it feels like the left hand is not speaking to the right hand.
Yeah.
We just don't know what we're doing. So we all feel you in that space. So honestly, Danny, how was it that you all started to tame the wild wild west? How did you
Yeah.
even start this task?
And so in the beginning, there was no social media policy in place. So that was really the start of all of it, is creating this social media policy that is mandatory to follow. And it applies to all institutional social media accounts. So it's not if you have an individual account and you work at the university, that doesn't apply, unless you are like an institutional leader and you're using that account to speak on behalf of Ohio State. And within the policy, there is an annual audit that must be completed by all institutional social media accounts, or you run the risk of potentially being shut down. That sounds like, Big Brother kind of, as the way I say it right there. We don't have to go out, and we don't go out and shut accounts down typically unless there's an issue, but it is in there. So we enforce it that way. But I think there's like 3,000 or 2,500 account submitted. They don't always, but it does grow year over year. So that's great to see.
So what does that initial audit even look like? I know you were teasing us about it earlier. What did that even look like?
So the initial one was very long. It started at the top with leadership buy-in, and that was how it was shared across all of the colleges, units, departments, with that leadership buy-in and understanding. And so our VP of marketing at the time, she was very on board with it and really helped, kind of did like a road show with the
Mm,
social
mhm.
team. And that's how it kind of went down. And then that communication with other social practitioners. So it was very long because you had to get a lot of that back end information of who's managing the account. At the time, the way it was created was a little too grandiose. I think baby steps would have been better than trying to tackle everything at once. Of there was the one to understand, obviously what accounts are out there, who's managing them, but also it asks who your audiences are, your like it had a section about explaining your strategy.
So it sounds like you had people fill out, like, did you have people fill out a form or something
Yes,
like
yeah,
that of
yeah, like
known? Okay.
yeah, an online form.
And that's where the mandatory requirement was successful because you had that leadership buy-in.
Yes.
Was that difficult, or was she just instantly on board?
Instantly on board. And I don't want to speak directly to that because at the time I wasn't on the team
Oh, right,
from the
right. Okay.
enterprise. I was in athletics when it first came out. um, I think she was part of the team that came up with the idea for it and saw that
Okay.
need for it. So that was, yeah, that leadership buy-in did make it successful, because then it was coming down from leaders of the other areas communicating, hey, we need to fill this out and submit it by this date. So that, yeah, that made it very helpful.
And on the part of other social media managers, did they sort of begrudgingly go along with the plan, or were they on board? Or maybe there
It,
was relief. Was there some relief on people's part, like, "Oh gosh, like, I don't have to do X or Twitter anymore. This is
yeah,
good?"
a
Okay.
mix of all of those, where some areas were jumping on board immediately, kind of adopting this, wanting to get involved, understand how they can help with centralizing. So, say, like the medical center team, who also has a ton of different units under them who have social accounts, they were like, yes, we want this so bad. Athletics, because there's 36 sports, they were happy about it. Well, I know when I was there, some people were a little begrudging, just because
Mhm.
there's like,
Mhm.
people who aren't doing social day to day, and have a lot of other things to do. So it was a total mix, and some people just wanted to ignore it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
and the team, because when I joined, I believe the year after, um, we understood that. We understand that it's something new. It is creating extra work, but we want to take all of this data that we're going to get back from this and use it as a resource to help connect people, to understand. Yeah, like I said, if there are duplicative accounts out there, or if there is an account that hasn't been active in 6 months, like why is that still there? Or helping with just brand standards in general, even to the point of, do all of our avatars need to be branded the same? Those tiny things that do add up. So we didn't just want to hoard the data for ourselves and keep it and say, thanks for doing it, we checked that box. Once we got the information back, it's what do we do with it to help improve the entire social community.
You do an annual audit now, like every year. So what does that entail? What does that look like?
Since I took it over, I changed it completely. Because I really thought about, okay, what purpose is this serving right now? We're not at the point where we need to know the target audience of every single social account. We're not at the point where we have a ton of duplicative accounts anymore, because, well, this is another thing in the policy that I actually forgot to mention at the top of centralizing, that came out of that first audit, is we created a social media application. So any new
Mm,
institutional account has to go through a social application process, so we can help them from the jump think strategically about it. So that's a place
mm,
where they're really asking those questions. Do you have enough time and resources to run a LinkedIn, Instagram, and an X account? If you don't, well, let's focus on one that will best serve your purpose, and best serve your strategy. And like, we ask for some different content examples so we know that they're going to be ready to go. And it isn't just like we talked about at the beginning, just being on the platform to be on the platform. So that came out of the social policy all in the beginning of this. But I have changed that too. So, uh, but everything, I've just made it a bit more, or the goal was to make it a bit more efficient overall,
Okay.
not take up as much time for other people that have to go through the process. And then understanding, what the information that we need out of it and what we're going to do with it. So I changed it to, we did not have any sort of social media directory at Ohio State. And
Hmm.
with such a massive place, there were always questions of, well, who manages this account? Or if we saw one pop up or we noticed that something, was wrong or something great happened with that account, like who manages it? So using the audit this past year, I simplified it to create a social media directory from it and then share that out as a
Mm,
resource with everybody.
that's
So I'm always trying to think about, yeah, how does it need to evolve? And what will we get out of it to the rest of the Ohio State social community?
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news. I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times bestselling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
That's awesome. And, it makes a lot of sense too, because I think the social landscape is always changing. So, as someone who leads social media for an institution, I think it makes sense for us to, adjust the policies and
Mm-hmm,
simplify and make them more efficient. And I think we should have the power to do that, right? Because
mm-hmm.
we're the ones in the spaces. So that makes a ton of sense to me. It does seem like you have some teeth in your policy, right? You can say you have to get off this platform. How does that look? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like I'll be the bad guy, I guess. but
Yeah.
but we do have it in there if there's an account that doesn't go through the application process, or if they haven't been active for a set period of time, it says the university has the right to shut down the account. We would never shut down an account and not tell anyone. It's once we talk to the account manager, figure out what's going on, because it's typically a resource issue, or they didn't, maybe they're new to the university, they didn't know about the process. So like 99% of the time, it's always just educating, here's the process, or
Mhm.
do you need to sunset that account if you don't have the resources for it. But within the policy, we do have kind of like another resources guide that talks about, okay, account transition standard. If you have a new account manager coming in, here's a list of everything that should happen before they start and what they should be handed on day one. So that transition is smooth, because I'm sure
Yeah.
I'm sure people have reached out to you before where they come in to take over an account and they don't have the passwords, or
All the time.
there's
They
someone
can't get
still logged
into it.
in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, you never want, just trying to um, forward think and so we can, get over any of those humps and just be prepared for them. Um, so really
Yeah.
but the teeth in the policy is, this is mandatory. And if you don't follow everything in the policy, you could get shut down.
Yeah. And I totally know about those situations where people ask for help. How do you know
Hmm.
someone at Facebook? How do we get back into this account that we can't log into? And I always feel really helpless because
I
we
know.
do,
Yeah,
we don't have a magic button, you know?
I know.
Yeah.
I
So
wish we had, and then some platforms are better, but when it comes to a password, that's one of the most challenging.
right. And so when you think about it at the front end to
Mhm.
prepare for business continuity, I think that's the best way to do it. So So, what does centralized social media look like today for the
Mhm.
Ohio State University?
Yeah. So since the beginning of this whole policy, the audit, the application process, and everything, there's been so much growth with the centralization, I guess we can say. But we have really established a good, I've said the word community a handful of times, because that's really how we want to treat it with everyone who has a hand in social across the university. So we have a social media community of practice that has grown out of this, and it was started close to the beginning of all of this too, and just grown year over year. And that is for anybody who has their, they don't have to be a social media director or have only social in their title. If they do anything in social, they're in, we want to put them in this group. And we meet every other month with everyone. It's an open invite. That's not a mandatory meeting, so attendance can vary, but it's a group. There's more than 200 people in the group. Um,
Mm.
and it's a place where people can come and ask questions. We have other units share out some of their successes. We talk about any campaigns that are going across the entire institution. It's just a place where everybody can learn from each other and serve as resources to each other and make those connections too. And it's an awesome group. People are so engaged. People are hilarious. It's some of my favorite meetings that my team and I lead. And yeah, we just really want to treat it like a community and like a resource so everybody can continue to build up with each other. And that's kind of the nature of social media, right? Like it is a community based network, and it's always changing too. So you need to stay up to date. So with that group too, we send out industry updates every other week, just in an email. So if there's something new coming out on every platform, people can be well aware of what's happening because it's a lot to keep up with. And I will never say that
Totally.
I'm up to date with every single change that's happening, but we do our best.
Y Yeah, no, who can it's so much, I agree,
Hmm.
and, we have a similar group at MIT, the Social Media Working Group, and I actually it sounds like what we're doing in those spaces are it's really similar, and I
Wonderful.
can also, like, speak to the benefits of having a group like that, so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. So Danny, what advice would you offer to social media teams or social media directors who wanna move toward this direction, this centralized direction?
This will recap a little bit from earlier, but establishing, the reason why, why do you want to do this, and then you can take it up to leadership to help get that buy-in. So if you are at an institution where it's massive, or even if it's small, that it's still large, right? And so you can have help in getting this shared out. um, and then don't try to do everything at once in the first go. I think starting off smaller of, okay, if we want to centralize, what's kind of step one, like phase one, phase two, phase three, and how do we want this to grow in, 5 years? It can be hard to think about that, especially because social is so instant and day of. So really thinking about how is this going to evolve? Who needs to be a part of this too? Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, what do you want to get out of it and what do you need to accomplish that? I'll use the audience example. Do you want to understand all of the different target audiences from the units across social and who they're trying to talk to? Is it that you just need the contacts for everyone so you can bring people together? Like once you have those, then you can communicate out to a group. Just thinking about what you need and kind of the baby steps that you need to get there, because it is overwhelming at the
Yeah.
beginning for
Yeah,
sure.
I liked how you said, 5 years from now because
Hmm.
this is not an overnight practice. This will take years.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of a reassurance to know you don't have to do this in 6 months, right? Or you
No.
cannot do this in 6 months. So,
Good luck,
um,
but I don't recommend that.
yeah, I would I
Not at all. That would be so hard. And it's still evolving, and it's been, I don't, I wish I should probably know the date that it started, but about 8 or 9 years ago, probably, and it's continuing to evolve year over year.
Danny, before I let you go, of course I'm going to ask you, what is your confession?
Ooh, I love this. I think that social holidays should go away.
Yes.
We don't need a national, I don't know, I saw one the other day, like National Applesauce Day. We don't, it's just, it's nuts. I'm like, who made all of these? And it's outdated if people are posting about them, if it's a huge part of your strategy. If you are, an applesauce producer and you manage their social accounts, that's great. Post about it. And there are some, some good ones, but they're just too much and they gotta go.
Not that we don't like applesauce. We just think in general, social media, there are too many, right? There are too many
Yes.
social media holidays, and it just, yeah. I agree. Ooh, I like this confession.
I
Um,
just can't with them. We never post unless no, really, we never post about them.
Yeah. I mean, unless they're
There's so
in your
many.
wheelhouse, right? Like,
Exactly.
unless it's
Yes.
such a central part of your
Hmm.
culture, you do not have to post about every single social media
Yeah.
holiday. I
I really want
agree.
to know who started these, who made these up, because there's just some wild ones, and they overlap so often. So many days have like 10 on them. Like, what
Yeah,
is
do
this?
you know what I learned? You can
What?
create your own social media holiday. Like if you and Danny, if you and I wanted to create the Danny and Jenny whole social media holiday, you can. You can just do it through like this process on Google or something. You can just create it. So
Okay.
that's why there are so many.
Okay, one of the listeners, please create a Danny and Jenny social holiday
No,
and
please
hashtag
don't.
no,
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 please no.
don't. Oh my gosh. That's back where we were in the beginning. It's the wild, wild west. Like they need a policy. They need an audit. Clean it up.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. And I love that confession. So thank you for that. And Danny, really thank you so much for your time and sharing your process and your expertise with us.
Oh, thank you. I know it's not sometimes the most glamorous side of it, but it is so in terms of function and connection and just really upscaling the university across social. It's fantastic. So the hard work pays off for it, but I really appreciate you having me on. Fantastic work on the podcast. It's so good. What a great space for this. So I really appreciate it.
Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Mallory Wilsey, and so many others of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.